Welcome to Wetherby Pembridge and to our very special evening with Gina Mallon. I'm Kate Bailey, I'm the head of Wetherby Pembridge here at 7 East 96, and it's a pleasure to be hosting our first full in-person event in our beautiful Founders Hall here at the school, and thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now, it's been a pleasure to welcome so many of you as families at our various school events as you've been looking ahead to the 22-23 school year. And I know I speak on behalf of all of my team in saying how good it's been to meet you and your children and to see you here at our open house events. As you know, we are a very warm, we're a very vibrant school community here at Wetherby. And whilst we stand for academic excellence and individualised instruction, every day we collectively promote this concept of an education for life for your children. Above all, our school is built on strong values and a true sense of family and community. Now, one aspect that also makes us unique here at New York City is the fact that we're a member of a larger educational group, Alpha Plus Group, and we're part of 19 schools, colleges and nurseries. Now, as a school here in New York City, we're supported by a very strong governing team who help drive our educational offering and standards even higher every year. And our New York Advisory Board meet 3 times a year as a stronghold for the school here in the city. And this is what brings us to our guest of honour here tonight. I'm delighted to further announce that Gina Mallon has joined the Wetherby Pembridge Advisory Board in September. And I'd like to extend my personal thanks as head to Gina for her guidance and her support. Now, for many in New York City, Gina needs no introduction, but for those of you who are interested to know more, Gina was for the last 5 years serving as the Executive Director of the Parents League of New York and was responsible for its overall strategy, marketing and operations, as well as serving as an active spokesperson for the organisation. Before assuming this role in 2016, Gina served for 7 years as its Director of School Advisory Services. During her time at the Parents League, she's visited hundreds of schools and counselled thousands of parents on schools admissions. And for me, this is what makes Gina so special for us here at Wetherby Pembridge. Gina's a frequent moderator and panellist on admissions programmes throughout New York. Volunteerism, children and education have always been an important part of Gina's professional life. She's volunteered extensively, serving as a tutor, fundraiser in other leadership roles at the Buckley School, Park Children's Day School, East Side Middle School, Harlem Day Charter School, and the East Harlem School at Exodus House. On top of that, Gina is a wonderful mother, having raised 3 beautiful children who've attended New York City independent and boarding schools. So it's an honour to have Gina join us here tonight and to join us on our advisory board from September. Gina, your expertise, your insights, your friendship, your passion and your support are truly valued by us all here. So without further ado, it's a pleasure to welcome Gina to speak tonight.
Thank you, Kate, so much for that wonderful introduction. I am so honored to be serving on the advisory board of the Wetherby Pembridge School, and I'm looking forward to getting to know better the school and the whole community. I think more than anything, it's a sense of community that first attracted me to Wetherby Pembridge. From the very first time I visited, when the school opened in New York in 2017, to my most recent visit last spring. And in fact, Wetherby Pembridge was the first school I visited after a 1.5 years of no school visits during the pandemic. It was the end of the academic year, and I have to say, it literally brought tears to my eyes. You can ask Kate to peek in on your children in their classrooms at a very safe distance. And so much joy, so much learning was happening, and it really, like I said, brought tears to my eyes. And as I sat in the lobby after checking in to the school, I was so struck by how kind and friendly a place it felt, how welcoming everyone was to me and to one another. And this is something I always do when I visit a school, when I sit in the lobby and I look around and I get a real sense of the place and the community. and how everyone interacts with one another. But this overwhelming sense of community made a big impression on me, and I imagine it did on all of you when you chose to become a part of this school. And I have also observed firsthand over the years a focus on a very strong curriculum combined with a holistic approach. And then, of course, there's Miss Bailey. Passionate educator, kind, smart, empathetic, enthusiastic, just brilliant, as the English would say. I can go on and on about her, and when she called to invite me to join the board, how can anyone say no to Mrs. Bailey? So again, it is indeed my honor to be a part of this advisory board, and I can't be more eager to meet all of you and talk with you, learn more about you, your children, and the school so I can better serve you in my capacity on the board. So tonight, Kate asked me to share some thoughts about parenting with you, and I have to say, as a former executive director of the Parents League of New York, my first response was, Kate, really, I am no expert. I am not. I know I have raised 3 children of my own and helped raise 4 stepchildren, but as you all know, parenting is a lot of trial, a lot of error, and very much on-the-job training, and I'm still training on the job. And I'm still seeking advice and input some 30-odd years into my parenting journey and still make my share of mistakes. Just ask my children. So I decided in order to prepare my remarks tonight, I thought I would solicit input from all corners, some of my favorite parents with children ranging from 2 to 42, some of my esteemed colleagues that I've had the pleasure to work with over the years, from teachers and parenting experts, and then also, most importantly, I asked the real experts, my children. Well, I'm sure some of this advice you've already heard, and I'm maybe already put into practice. I'd like to pass along some of what has been shared with me, and I always think it's a good reminder to hear again. As I sifted through the input I received, a few common themes surfaced. 1, fostering independence. 2, establishing structure and consistency. 3, offering support and encouragement. And 4, finally, practicing patience. Let's start with fostering independence. I think it's really important to begin establishing independence from an early age. Young children, as you all know, are very surprisingly capable. And I believe independence builds confidence. And in this age of helicopter parenting, I would advise you to be very careful not to hijack opportunities where your child can learn to be independent. Instead, encourage them and support them and tell them, you've got this, you can do this, but I'm here if you need me. Whether it's going down the slide on your own, walking to the classroom on your own, or navigating a new city, as you'll see as your children get older and they're young adults. They are capable, they can do it. But I know that letting them be truly independent is very challenging, and it can go against some of our basic parenting instincts. We know we just want to help our children, we want to step in, we want to be there, but sometimes we simply need to let them make mistakes. And some of the most satisfying successes come not only from letting them do it on their own, but also recovering from failure. So this is from my godson, who's 30. Remind your kids that they are their best advocates from an early age. If they have a problem with a teacher, encourage them to address it directly. To a point, of course, but that early emphasis on self-efficiency can really help. And best of all, it might indirectly reduce the temptation for excessive helicopter parenting. And in fact, my daughter, a beginning preschool teacher, might have summed it up best when she advised simply, just take a step back. I think that was meant for me too. Now, establishing structure and consistency. So I'll start with advice from 2 young moms. Kids need routine and structure. I think we all can agree on that. They may push back initially, but they like boundaries and guidelines and thrive within them. And in the end, they look to us adults to help establish them. So setting the rules benefits both the parent and the child. And one mom told me, setting boundaries basically has held my life together for the past 5.5 years. She has a 5.5-year-old and a 3-year-old. But the challenge is not to be too rigid and to be flexible. So as you move through parenting, you'll no doubt find the middle ground that works best for you. Emily Boucher, who is a parenting expert and runs Work and Play workshops for parents, reminds us that there is no better person to create viable, sustainable, effective routines for your family than you. So trust yourself, you know your family, you know your children, and be confident in the routines that you establish. But establishing structure isn't only half the battle. We need to be consistent parents. A friend shared with me that he was always the fun parent, the more relaxed parent, while his wife was more serious and the disciplinarian. When she died, he said that he tried to be both. One of his children, who was a teenager at the time, finally said to him, "What are you doing, Dad? We're like really confused. We don't know who we're getting next or what is happening next." So that story really resonated with me, and I think demonstrates how much children need consistency. No one likes unpredictability. None of us adults, we like consistency in our relationships. But so children, they not only thrive in predictable routines and structures, but also consistent parenting. When children are faced with unpredictability, they become anxious, which, as many of us know too well, this can be a real handicap in the age of anxiety. Consistent parenting is hard, it takes time, it takes energy, and no one can be perfectly consistent all the time. And again, it's sometimes important to try to be flexible. And I like the phrase that Emily uses, and she says we should strive to be, quote, in the middle parents. Another common piece of advice was always to offer support and encouragement. And this is from a longtime friend and a longtime educator in the New York City public schools, and she's a principal. And this is what she always tells her parents: be your child's biggest supporter. When things don't go as your child hoped, you don't always have to rush in and fix it or tell them how to solve their problems. Sometimes they just want you to acknowledge how they are feeling. Kids are notorious for rehearsing things just to see and judge your reactions. So let them know it's okay to be disappointed, angry, feel left out, have hurt feelings. We all do. Teaching them how to deal with those feelings will be life lessons, will help shape their resiliency, and help them form coping mechanisms. The hardest part, of course, is to know when just to listen and to keep our mouths shut. It's even harder in our adult relationships. Support, though, I think also means encouragement. And my daughter offered this anecdote, and she said, any interest I had as a child was met with encouragement. And if I signed up for something, although it was expected that I make an effort to show up and participate, I was never forced into signing up for an activity that I was not really interested in, and never discouraged from participating in something. And then I was never told I had to continue doing something that I no longer found any joy in. Now, that doesn't mean that I let her quit in the middle of an activity or the middle of a semester-long program, but we encouraged her to always follow her instincts. And my son said the same thing, and he said his advice was to go ahead and foster imagination and creativity and give your children a framework within which they can thrive and be successful. A parent's job, he said, I think, is to encourage rather than enforce. And so I say this: never confuse your child's interest with your own. And please don't make the fatal mistake of encouraging activity for the sole purpose of getting your child into an Ivy League school. I'm just going to put that out there. My son-in-law left me with an especially touching example of how this kind of support can lead to effective parenting. And he said, supporting a child is not just feeding and providing a roof, but really effective support means standing by your child when they need it without applying pressure. And he remembers being a slow learner as a child and was placed in special reading classes. He was very frustrated and was determined to improve, and his mother recognized this. And as a result, she would walk him to the library every day after school, and they would check out books to read together at night. He remembers feeling her compassion and desire to help, and how patient she was with him when he got upset and frustrated when reading was too hard. But he knew how much she supported him, and by the next year, he was out of the special reading classes, and later on, as he moved through school, placed in honors level English classes. Now, not everyone has the good fortune of having a very skilled special ed teacher as a mom. That's my son-in-law's mother. But what stuck with me was how large a role her simple patience played in enabling him to become the confident reader he became, and even more importantly, a confident child and young man. So now patience. This is a hard one for me, I will admit, and for my husband too. He said, half jokingly, it takes a lot of patience to be patient. So we try and try again to continually work on this with each other and our children. So I think patience doesn't mean never to discipline your child or allow your child to always do what they want. But patience can be exhibited when a parent explains to their child why their child's actions were wrong and why you became upset. So back to my lovely son-in-law, he said, you know, I was certainly yelled at by my father as a child, but what I remember is my father always did this. He would come into my room after a dispute, after an argument, after he lost his patient, sit down next to me, and first say, I love you. He'd then continue by asking me why he thought he became upset, and he always showed patience in helping me learn right from wrong. It's normal to lose your patience with a child, but having the patience to calm oneself and to have a compassionate conversation can really impact how a child handles emotion and decision-making situations. So I'm reminded of a quote from my colleague, Rachel Hennis, who is also a parenting expert in New York City independent schools and a social worker. And this is just a practical, helpful advice when you're about to lose it. Before you react to your child, take a breath and ask yourself, is this really a crisis? And if the answer is no, go slow. Your children will remember how they felt with you in this moment so much more than anything you said or did. So, while I think most of you agree, a good deal of this advice is tried and true, and I know you've probably heard it many times before, but let's also remember that we are living through very extraordinary times, very trying, stressful, disconcerting times. And some best advice from dealing in the here and now comes from Sally Tannen, who I emailed before I was giving this talk, to hear what advice she would give parents. And Sally Tannen is the longtime director of the 92nd Street Y Parenting Center here in New York. So Sally wrote to me and said, I think it's important to acknowledge that we haven't all recovered from the trauma of the last year and a half. And I think that making sure parents know to keep checking in with their kids, even if they outwardly seem so happy to be back in school as they may, in fact, some mourn the time that they had with their parents when they were all home together. So I think that's something really important to think about. So a suggestion might be to hold on to one of the things that you all did together to keep that ritual going. I also think, as Sally says, teachers are still traumatized, and any way that we can acknowledge that they have struggled also and worked so hard and continue to work so hard would probably be greatly appreciated. And so finally, I will leave you with one last piece of advice, which I remember hearing a long time ago, and I still repeat this to myself all the time. Love and accept the child you have, not the one you want. Thank you so much, and I hope to speak to you all and hear more about your parenting and advice.